As Wendy said, we had did some great work this afternoon with Dr. Stevenson, and we are really excited to get to share that work with you tonight. We were able to do this because of a collaboration with Dr. Wendy Helder and a bunch of people here at the Haverford School who made this happen tonight as well. The single most important one is the one I'm going to invite out to the stage now. Haverford School's first ever Director of Diversity and Inclusion and upper school history teacher, Brendon-Jeremi. Let's hear it for Brendon.
So I wanted to introduce Dr. Stevenson because his work means so much to me, but I also wanted to share an address that we offer to the faculty because we're starting to build a shared language here and a shared way of thinking about what the work of inclusion should look like and most importantly feel like. It's called Integration is Innovation. Integration is innovation in a nation that finds itself to be increasingly tribal. In the media all around us, we're reminded of just how divided we are as a nation. Of course, we know, or let us be reminded, that this isn't the whole story. It's a single story that tells us that we live in sound loops of people just like us. Social science has shown us evidence of this. To this evidence, humanity asks us to respond with empathy. And psychology offers us frameworks for crafting pathways to building healthy connections with one another, human to human. Disrupting the single story of social disconnection, of intractable division, of tribalism is the work of inclusion. It is the work of integration. To paraphrase a message from a community reflection last year here at the Haverford School, no one thrives when feeling unsafe, unmoored, and disconnected. Survival mode limits the full cultivation and communal sharing of our gifts and our talents. In school, we demand space to practice being our best selves. That takes vulnerability. It's not easy. Integration is innovation, and school is a wonderful place to practice. Practice can be fun. Practice can be challenging. And you may be thinking, we integrated nearly 2 generations ago. But there's still plenty of work to be done, new work to be done, and tools and strategies that make the way forward less mysterious, less beyond our reach. That's innovative. That's innovation. It changes our relationship with things that we may find beyond our reach. The work is person to person, it's story-driven, and it challenges us, or perhaps reminds us, to be mindful and to listen to each other. And I mean really listen to each other with our hearts as well as with our minds. Much of that work is the work of healing, of seeing, of noticing, of listening, of feeling, of realizing that belonging matters. And it takes practice. It takes practice to consistently display the courage and the bravery it takes to connect across lines of difference, to be a community of friends. And these schools really do have the potential to be really strong communities of friends. There's so many folks to thank. We've thanked a bunch already, maybe too much to mention at this moment, but I do want to thank the leadership of both the Agnes Irwin School and of our school. Folks rallied together in both faculties and in the leadership teams to not just get Howard here for us tonight, but to also actually engage in the work and to think about playing with this. I want you to think about the idea of play as you hear Howard's address to us, because there is play in this. Practice can also be play. Although we come to this session for different reasons and at different points along our own development, our goal is the same at both of our schools, in our homes, in our communities, to get better about belonging. This evening's session will ask us to practice racial literacy as a way of managing in the moment racially stressful encounters. Howard Stevenson, Penn GSE scholar, chair of the psychology department, and director of the Racial Empowerment Collaborative, has been working to offer us tools for what to do and how to manage stressful moments, those hard ones between people, the ones that hurt, the ones that harm, ones that we often fail to notice, yet feel regardless. Now please, let's introduce Dr. Stevenson. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Way to make an entrance. Good evening. I've lost track of time, actually. How's everybody doing today? Good. I'm a little tired, I'll be honest with you. It's been a long day, but a good day. And I thought I would start first thanking everybody who helped pull this together. It's been an experience on so many levels. I know the collaboration, it takes work and effort for both Dr. Hill and Dr. Nago. It's been fantastic. Brendon, and we have folks here, but Brendon and Donna Lindner have been outstanding. They've asked me so many questions in preparation for today, making sure I got fed and making sure I was focused and here on time. And I have some folks here who are training for us at the Racial Empowerment Collaborative. Erica Snowden and Medea Grant is here as well, who are planning to be trainers as part of our collaborative, and who have incredible skills, as well as Brendon, because we are having a request every week now. We're getting a request every week to be talking about these issues. And tonight the goal is to have the conversations, have some back and forth. And we could talk about research. I'm pretty open to doing that. But I'm prepared more so to have a conversation. And I'll just give a little bit of intro. When we think about the politics of race as being stressful in today's climate, the question I have as a parent, as some people might have as a parent, is, how do we navigate this world? We've been doing research for 30 years now, asking the question, does it matter if you talk to your children about race? And some of that research suggests it matters a lot, it helps a lot. And the reasons that talking about race might be useful is that when you run into moments of racial challenges, sometimes we have reactions, we get tongue-tied. Have you ever been in a situation where you finish the situation and you wish you had said something that you didn't? You walk away feeling, I wish I coulda, I shoulda. And you say, boy, if they come back again, I'm ready. Do you ever have those moments where you feel like, I have these strong social justice values and I believe in justice, and when the time came, I didn't stand up. I didn't do what I expected to do. And those are the kind of moments we think all of us struggle with. We're all struggling with that. And we might feel compelled, given what's happening in the country, that we should be more prepared as opposed to less prepared. And so one argument for racial literacy is, how do I stand up in the moments that represent my own values? But standing up for me is one thing. What standing up for my child is something very different, right? Maybe I can endure the indignities and the hostilities of the world just so that they can have a place. But what if I'm not around them when they run into those same things? What do I do? How do I prepare for those moments? What do I say to them? And we think of racial socialization as been helpful. One argument as to why, we have seen some studies that suggest the more parents talk to their children about race, these are mostly families of color, the better they are around anger management, around depression management, the more that they are able to engage academics, right? There's a colleague of mine, Enrique Neblett, out of the University of North Carolina. His work has looked at the connection between racial socialization and academic outcomes, right? And yet we're still in a culture that is afraid to talk about these issues. So afraid that if that moment comes, I start to stutter, I start to worry what people are going to think of me. I'm going to be identified as the only one, a stereotype, the angry this. And I would say that literacy should try to address some of that, at least. And when we found out that parents talking to their race had these positive outcomes, we recognized that what parents say they say to their children is different what children say their parents say to their children. And we started asking questions of the children, what is it your parents say to them? And then finding out that those children, usually adolescents, who said, my parents talked to me about this, that it was positive for them. So it wasn't just parent to child, it was also what children say they got. So transmission is one issue. How much do I impart as a parent, as an adult, as a teacher? But also, how much do children get and acquire and use and take? And as I said to the Agnes Urban faculty today, in my family, my mother and father have very different styles. My father believed if you ran into a racial conflict, he had us in church 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. He believed that if somebody bothered you because of your race, you pray for them, knowing that God will get them back in the end. He believed in spiritual retaliation, but it was a sort of prolonged retaliation. It might not happen today. But one day, in that great getting up morning, in the great by and by, there will be justice. And you shouldn't sully yourself with the day-to-day. You don't have to get physical. It's a spiritual warfare. And yet, my mother had a very different view. She grew up in North Philly. North Philly is different than Southern Delaware. Anybody here heard of Delaware before? Anybody here about Southern Delaware before? Very different. And so the people in Southern Delaware, church folk, their approach was different than the family in North Philly, who were in your face. They didn't believe in waiting. Didn't believe in one day. They believed right now. I want retaliation right now. And so part of those sort of approaches growing up was to somehow blend the sense of, preparation and waiting versus take care of it right now. And the argument for waiting, I would say, is rested in the idea of sometimes you have to prepare for situations. You can't just on the fly come up with something. Because if you haven't practiced, you ever tell a joke and you screw up the punchline and you're the only one that's laughing and everybody else is laughing, but they're laughing at you, not with you. That's what happens when you have a comeback line that you're unprepared, that you have not. And so what I got from my father's way is that you got to prepare, you got to ponder, you got to think through, you got to maybe wait until you're ready. And my mother's view is like, to what degree can you say in this moment, we do not leave this moment where I carry your water, or I carry your weight, or I carry your hatred. I reject your rejection of me. And so as a parent, it's stressful to think about these things. And one of the tensions that we have found, at least in this proverb, the lion's story will never be known as long as the hunter is the one to tell it. And this is what we're going to do tonight, tell a story, and to see what in a story is magical, what in a story is healing, what in a story involves this notion of racial socialization. What do I want to communicate, and what is it that I want to acquire in these engagements? That the lion story will never be known as long as the hunter is the one to tell it. And so the question we ask, who's telling your story? Right? Who is telling your story? What story are you telling about you? And in my years at Penn, University of Pennsylvania, I used to say, the first thing I said when I got on the campus was, I belong here, but I do not fit in. There's a way in which my culture, where I grew up in Southern Delaware, were very good people, many who didn't go to school, who didn't finish school, right? Who helped to raise us, who was always in our business, who troubled us when we were wanting to be left alone as teenagers. We couldn't stand some of these people because they was always in our business. I could do something 20 miles away and it would be home before I got home. These people, they taught us how to belong in a sense. And the tension was, belonging is an acceptance of my difference and my competence. That is, to what degree do I believe and accept my own difference? Not what other people say about me, but what I say about me. What do I believe about my own competence and my difference? I have the talent to be here. I have the right to be here. That is not dependent on anyone else. That's my story. But fitting in is about how much do I depend on other people's acceptance of me, acceptance of my difference, acceptance of my competence. Embracing my own narrative is belonging. Shape-shifting so that other people can be comfortable about my difference, we argue, is about the story of the hunter story. So one of the questions we're asking is there a cost to shape-shifting, to try to fit in? And what is that cost? Maybe the cost is minimal. Maybe it's absolutely functional for us to code switch in ways that allow us to navigate different environments. But have we counted the cost? Have we counted the cost? So I'm going to start with this notion of belonging, and by the end, hopefully we get to this narrative around the tension between belonging and fitting in. In our work, we're focused on racial politics, but not ideas. That is, it's one thing to be just about racial and social issues, but it's another thing to make a just decision. Ideology, decision-making, very different. And we've been focused on what happens in the moment face-to-face encounters, where you have to have conversations, or where some police youth engagements go awry, where the outcomes are negative or violent. And the question raised there is, how competent are we to navigate these face-to-face moments? So the work that we're doing and we're going to talk about is that it's emotional. That is, it's going to get emotional. And I say to folks that emotion is not just a good thing, but a Jedi Knight good thing. And I always apologize to people who don't like Jedi Knights or hate Star Wars or don't like anything related to science fiction or space or stars. The goal here is to say, what happens in a moment, in a room, where you are the only one who's not freaking out when a racial conversation shows up? You ever been in a room where a racial conversation shows up and people scurry to the corners, or the room gets dark, or people swallow and gulp a lot? That moment, that racial elephant moment, if you are the one that is not freaking out, you will appear quite magical. And I think part of the skills is how well do you notice what's going on with you, right? And that is a sense of courage. To what degree that I notice that I am overwhelmed? I notice that I'm not sure what I'm saying. I notice that I'm starting to stutter. I notice that I'm worried that people are going to think I'm a racist. I notice that I'm going to be perceived as the angry black and the angry brown or whatever. To notice that allows you to have some recourse in the decision making, and then admitting it to yourself is even more important. We try to keep people focused in the present. We try to teach a set of skills called calculate, locate, communicate, breathe, and exhale. Calculate means what feeling are you having right now and how intense is it? And locate is sort of where in your body do you feel it. The more specific you are, the better. Communicate means to what degree you recognizing your self-talk or self-imaging. And BE represents breathe and exhale, and I'll come back to that. We also are not interested in blaming folks. We're actually interested in finding out how competent folks are, even though there will be a sense of blame or shame about these discussions. And I will also say, when I first came to Penn as a faculty member in a culturally different place, I thought maybe since I study race, I will be the kind and gentle colleague with my white colleagues, and that I would start being a safe person that they could share issues with, and maybe we could write together and walk in the sunset of academic support or whatever, something warm. But what I learned is that not being direct about these racial issues allowed for other people to stay in the closet and not really address the issues. And then my discomfort, in many respects, or their discomfort was not addressed. So now I'm just more direct. I try to say things as they come, to be honest about them, but also allow people to sort of come back at me as well around these issues. But it does get emotional, and we do expect people to think about noticing. So we're going to start with this one image, and pretend you're home or wherever you yell out. What do you see when you look at this image? And parents or children can yell out, doesn't matter.
Bunch of people that can't see, making guesses about what they feel.
Okay, bunch of people, that's good. Thank you.
People have a perspective
Okay, thank you. What else?
An angry elephant.
Angry elephant. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Very good. Some places.
Seeing the elephant for what it truly is.
Uh-huh. Thank you. People not working together. All right.
People very confident in their ideas.
People very confident. Yes. Anything else? Anybody see the blindfolds? Anybody not see the blindfolds? Okay. So there's a way in which some things you might see, some things you might not see. That's important. Your brain works. There's sometimes you can have somebody right in front of you and you not see certain things. In racial interactions, that happens a lot, particularly if you're stressed by them. Your brain does some funny things when it's stressed. If I'm worried that you'll think I'm a blank, I may be focusing on some things about you, but not other things. I might not be able to hear you as well, even though you're saying something that's very clear. If I can't register you, it might affect the decisions I'm going to make about you. Anything else you see? Okay, so anything that's one thing. So do you have a feeling about anything you see here in the picture?
I feel like the elephant.
Okay, which is?
Misunderstood.
Misunderstood. Okay, thank you.
I feel like there are a lot of statements being made, but not any questions being asked.
Okay. And what feeling would that be? A lot of statements made.
I think you can feel a range of emotions about that. I think maybe in some ways you might feel surprised by just, the simplicity of thinking I could just ask you what you are,
Mm-hmm.
who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Some frustration over time, depending upon how long that interaction goes on.
Yeah.
Frustration over not feeling like you can get to that place where you actually ask me a question so that I can identify me for myself.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
100-pound elephant in the room, and we all need to get, we can't figure the whole thing out, so we have to get a small portion of it and try to figure it out.
Okay. And is that what you see? Well, how do you feel about that? If that were true, there is this elephant in the room. Do you have a feeling about it that people can't see?
And yeah, the feeling is that if they collaborated together, they could all see it for what it is.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And if they collaborated and see it, would you have a certain feeling if they collaborated?
They'd all have a shot at actually determining exactly what it is.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
It's very loud. Everybody's talking. Nobody's listening.
Okay. And that's what you see.
Yeah, I imagine myself in this place. It's very loud.
Do you have a feeling about it? What you see? The fact that people are loud, but they're not getting something. Do you have a feeling about that?
It's hard to think.
It's hard to think. Hard for them to think? What about for you? How do you feel about it's hard for them to think? You feel me?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a frustration because
Good.
there's something there. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm interested for the rest of our time, I'm going to get you to in a second, not only what you think, but also what you feel. Very imperative. If you have all these gifts of thinking, if you have all these other gifts of feeling, and most racial conversations go awry when we stay up here. We get hijacked by this. So you two had comments. In the back.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I would feel unheard and ignored.
Unheard and
Ignored.
ignored. Thank you. Yes.
It seems like the doctors or scientists or whatever they are very entitled to touching and poking and
that elephant looks so unhappy, and there's zero regard for that elephant. And it would, I mean, you would assume if they have use of their hands, they could take the blindfolds off and just
Yes.
look at it, you know?
And do you have a feeling about that?
I feel protective of the elephant.
Okay,
I feel
All right.
like he's vulnerable.
thank you. Yes. You are talking truth. I like this. This is great.
It makes me feel sad.
Sad.
Yeah, very. I didn't see anger. I see sadness.
With the elephant?
Yes.
Oh, okay. But
And
you feel,
myself,
but good.
looking
Excellent.
at the elephant with all of this going on, it makes me feel sad to see all of that. No one's really paying attention, or like they said, communicating and trying to get, working together. No one's working together. It's all about me and what I think. And then we have this poor, sad-looking elephant with everyone everywhere, not listening, not seeing.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
I look at it more as self-assessment and utilizing tap your other skill sets to identify and see what is before you. In this picture, what I see is them using one sense each. We have one person using a sense of touch
Right.
to kind of identify what it is before them and not tapping into their other senses
Sure.
to really see what's before them.
Yes. But you know, they got noses, right? You think they could smell something. Might give a lot of clue as to what's going on.
Right, so for them to say it's a snake, it's a tree has a smell,
Right.
you know. For them to say it's a rope has a feel,
Mhm.
you know. So
Yeah.
a wall is hard, where, you know, touching the elephant,
Sure.
yes, it's hard, but you feel the context and the concourse of the skin.
Yes.
So tapping into your other senses kind of gives you a bigger picture
Right.
of that, what it is you're trying to see.
And if you were in a situation like that, people only tapping into one sense, how would you feel about that?
How would I feel about that?
Yes.
I feel angry.
Okay.
I've experienced that.
Yeah.
I continue to experience that. So when people see you, their first perception of you is, you know, that.
Yeah. Right.
And if they don't take the blinders off to see the big perception of, okay, who you really are, they'll never experience that, who you really are.
Right. Sure. And I actually think about that, and it saddens me that I could be misunderstood. But what if my child was also in that scenario? I feel more sad. Maybe I could take it, but I don't know if they can take it. I don't think it's right. They shouldn't have to take it. I might feel angry and sad at the same time. So you got this perspective, right? So the question you ask is, maybe I'm the elephant. What if I'm the elephant in the room? Every room I walk in, maybe I'm the elephant. Ivy League school, culture I grew up, education, interesting. They say education, if you get too much education, you might lose a sense of yourself. Don't forget where you come from. I'm a little worried about it. I thought they were crazy as a teenager. Why? Because they ain't been out of Delaware. They ain't never left Delaware. They don't know what the world's like. What do they know? But they were right. A lot of education teaches you to reject your difference, to reject yourself, intentional or not. Some people ask me, when are you going to be out of school? When you're out of school, when you get out? You need some help? You ever got people that don't fully understand what you do, you love them to death, but they still your people, and you can't explain anymore. You're tired of explaining. See, well, I was a chair recycling problem. What's that? You're still in school? That's a lot of, you can't explain. But they still love you. They still care about you. They helped to raise you. The first book I wrote, I had to write a book that I could take home, that people could see themselves in. Does that make sense? So the thing is, if I'm the elephant, what if I walk in every room? What if my child walks in every room and they are the elephant? And people are only catching a piece of them. What is that like? It stresses me out as a parent. So the way you all were looking at perspective, it makes a lot of sense, right? But at the collaborative, we're trying to say, what if we could look at racial problems and issues from a both and standpoint, not an either or. It's either right or wrong. You're either conservative or liberal. You're either left or right. What if we could have opposites coexist, that we are both right and wrong about something? We're both brilliant some days and idiotic on others. Some days we are normal, poster child for normalcy. And if we catch you on the wrong day, the wrong time, stressed out, you're easily diagnosable, and someone can cart you away without any permission to the nearest Bellevue. Those things can coexist on the same person, on the same day, within an hour. You know? And what if these folks are both blinded and sighted? They are knowing some things and they are not knowing others. They do know something, but they don't know other things. And those are coexisting at the same time. We think that it's possible for people to be caring and passionate as well as bigoted. Those can coexist at the same time. Right? Putting people in categories sometimes blurs the lines. Sometimes we make conservative decisions and liberal decisions. We might not let anybody know that, but that's a possibility. But there's another issue about stress. How many of you would agree with me that the person who discovered a snake is going to be more stressed than the person who discovered a rope? Anybody agree with that? So let's just assume here, we did this with the faculty today, there's like 75 snakes showed up today. Some of them are having some challenges in their parenting skills, and they want to know how y'all do it. So they just come into the room, come from over here, come from over there, they decide to slither underneath your seats. Just say hello. Check you out. How many of you would be stressed at 7 or above? How many of you would be at a 3 or below? Why would you be at a 3 or below?
Well, I'm in an environment where it's going to be figured out very quickly.
Uh-huh.
So I'm not going to be that concerned.
Okay. You mean an environment of snakes?
No, I mean an environment of where in reality,
Oh.
I'm here.
Okay.
So, therefore, someone's, texting, calling, someone showing up to take care of it. So
You're cool.
worried.
You're cool. All right. You trust people you have not even met. Some of these people do the right thing.
I do.
Okay. All right. Even the ones that are 7 or above, they would be. Some of y'all would run over your own children to get out the door. But hey, it happens. Yes.
I think it's based on experience. Having been around some snakes, physical snakes, where you can identify those that are poisonous and those that aren't, I have a little bit more comfort with that.
Yeah.
Where I can, okay, if I see a snake that I may not be familiar with, then I'd be concerned.
Yes.
To see a snake that you're familiar with, okay, that's just a garden snake.
Okay. Yes. You grew up in the country?
I grew up in Miami.
Miami. Okay. Now, as you were talking, some people were shaking their heads because they can't even fathom the possibility of what you're talking about right now. They're so stressed, even though there are no snakes in here, they're stressed about you thinking about something. That it's that visceral, right? So, thank you. Experience. The same way we think about racial politics. Some people will come into a racial moment, no biggie. I've seen this before. On a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 3 for me. I know exactly what to do. I know what to make decisions about. Expose your experience. But some people run into a racial moment and see a 12-year-old boy like a snake. A poisonous one about to attack. The neuroscience research on this is pretty powerful in that if I perceive you to be a threat, 8, 9, or 10, on a scale of 1 to 10, my brain goes on lockdown, I lose peripheral vision and hearing, and I'm only thinking about 3 areas of my body, here, here, and here. And the issue is, it's either you or me. It's going to be me. Those are threat-like conditions. And all of us who get to that space are usually only protecting ourselves. We're not thinking about anybody else. And so our goal is to think about how do you get literate if you only have 2 minutes or less to make a decision. what I believe around racial justice is important, but if I can't make a just decision in less than 2 minutes, what good is it? How useful is it? And in the process, anyway, something that we're worried about. Yes, sir.
I just had an observation here. They got physical blindfolds on. I know there are metaphors of mental blindfolds as well, but if they all saw what was really in front of them, they would be afraid because they are so close to the elephant and they have already preconceived notions of what an elephant, it is a big, strong animal. It's not shackled down. Right. So they wouldn't be asking those questions. They would just automatically assume that I'm going to get trampled. Right. So I think something would be similar exposed to that. But when I'm looking at the physical blindfolds, what if they take them off? Right. There's immediate fear. So sure. How do they get past what they see, what they think they see, versus what a docile animal could be?
And how do we take those off? How do we take the blindfolds off? Is the question. Maybe you're asking. I don't know. And if the question is, am I the elephant? Is that because I see myself as the elephant, or is that because somebody else sees me as the elephant? And in the case of, for example, some of the research suggests for black and brown boys, children and adults, that when people are threatened by them, they see them as older than they really are, closer than they really are, and larger than they really are. So in some respects, the question of perception matters here. Some of us might see this elephant as huge. Or some of us might see someone who's small as an elephant that's huge. That's very different. And so I think that's a reasonable question. Can you take the blindfolds off? And if so, how? Whether they're mental or physical. And how do I see somebody exactly as who they really are? If you look at Tamir Rice was shot within at least 6 seconds, Cleveland. And if you read the transcripts from the trial, you'll find that the officer thought he was a grown man, right, and perceived him as a grown man to justify why he would take the shot with little time. And so your question is a good one in terms of, who are we seeing when we're looking at? And do our blind spots sort of betray us?